I think the biggest issues that cities all around the world are facing is actually just the rising impact of climate breakdown. In the last month, I was in Dhaka in Bangladesh, which has had flooding that's forced hundreds of thousands of people out their home, or in the United States, Phoenix, Arizona, has had 100 consecutive days of 40-degree plus temperature. So particularly how you pay for a change to a cleaner economy. Here the government is investing very heavily. So what we try and do in C40 is share ideas. So there's competition between the cities, but it's not about winning, it's about learning from each other. I think particularly when you're talking about the big cities in the world, there's a lot more that unites them that's similar than is different. So you've got over half of all the investment in the world in renewable energy takes place in China. Well, today, so I've been learning about a really amazing microgrid program where there is an electric car charging facility that has got solar panels shading it and with battery storage. So 400 kilowatts, that's even faster than we saw in Guangzhou. When there are power outages or when there's sort of peaks and troughs in the power across the city, that facility, using a microgrid, can supply the power to the offices that are next door. So it's a really good example of how to both to use renewable energy, use electric vehicles, but also to manage energy efficiently. So China's absolutely the world leader in electric vehicles by a very, very long way. But I was really pleasantly surprised still to learn that there are 700,000 electric vehicles on the roads in Chengdu. And actually you can tell, because when you're out in these streets with these huge roads, thousands of cars, it's relatively quiet and there's relatively low levels of pollution compared to if that was the same in a city where all the cars were internal combustion engine. One of the programs we have in C40 is actually kind of green, thriving neighbourhoods. Where we're sitting right now, the Angong district is one of the projects within that green, thriving neighbourhoods. And that is about, exactly as you say, it's about taking not just a plan to reduce emissions, but the broader sustainable development goals. So how do you give people a really good quality of life? They can access all the services that they need to have a good life. So you see the clean air zone in London, which is where I live, that's now being copied in Bogota, in Colombia, in Milan, in Italy. Or in fact, the revolution in electric buses that started here in Shenzhen has now been transferred all across the world, particularly in Latin America. And actually a city that's designed with public transport, where actually people don't have to travel very large distances to take their children to school or to go to work. Those cities function much better. And I think that kind of green, thriving neighbourhood approach, the 15-minute city approach. So in the Angong green, thriving neighbourhood here, one of the things I was impressed with is that many of the roofs of the buildings have been turned into mini parks, so with grass planted on them, place for people to come and congregate and drink tea, but it also has the benefit of better insulating the building, so it both needs less heat in the winter and doesn't need so much cooling in the summer when the temperatures are hot. The big issue that we're trying to focus on is how leadership in cities can help the whole of the world halve the use of fossil fuels by 2030, and that the main emphasis there is on the rich countries that have caused the climate crisis, so like my own in the United Kingdom, Europe, United States. They need to massively reduce their emissions, and at the same time that we see investment in a country like China that is really leading the world in renewable energy, that will allow China to have a clean energy system in the next decade after that. You can see how China is learning from both the successes and mistakes of the rest of the Western world. Of all the countries in the world, China is doing the most to combat the climate crisis. Just because of the sheer scale of the investment in renewable energy, which has changed the whole world market, and the investment in electric vehicles. But there's still a lot that China can learn from elsewhere in the world, and I think particularly the way that European cities have designed their cities.
2000年。
2000年啊，哦，it's 2000.
Oh, okay, but it looks so in such good condition. It's really interesting because I think most people in the West think of China, everything is new, everything looks new, but actually there are some old communities, old buildings, and so what's being done here in the Angong community is really relevant for lots of those older communities in Europe, in North America, and other places around the world. It's a new learning point, and the way C40 works, we share everything. So everything that's learned here gets shared with all the other cities, and every city that participates always gives something but learns something as well. The path forward is very clear. Green cities, healthy cities, no pollution, and where people can travel very easily and very cheaply without polluting the atmosphere. And I'm very interested here in Chengdu to see that the city calls itself a park city. But I was also really pleased to hear in Chengdu about the 100 kilometers of greenway cycling that rings the city, which sounds fantastic. If I was here for longer, I would get a bike and cycle on that 100 kilometer greenway.